Good morning, everyone. Welcome to our Civic Electoral Processes training focused on promoting good governance. And we are glad to see many of you already joined in. And thank you for logging in on time. For those of you that were here on time, we apologize for the slight delay in starting, but we are ready to go, and we will be getting started very shortly. In the meantime, we just want to get a sense of who is in the room. So if you could go to the chat and just take a moment to just introduce to us your name, what you do, and perhaps one expectation you have from today's conversation. What are you looking forward to in this training or in this conversation this morning? So just your name and what you do, and then also you could just put down one expectation for the day in the comment chat. We'll take about 3 minutes to do that, and then we'll get started. Looking forward to your interaction in the chat. Awesome, great. Thank you so much, colleagues, for sharing your introductory notes with us. It's very interesting to see the dynamics in the room, and just to be able to note everybody that has joined in. Quite an interesting mix of people in civil society, people in entrepreneurship and in the business sector. But I think we can agree that from the comments and the notes that have been shared, we all are gathered for a common purpose, and that is to be able to gain insights into civic participation and electoral processes, and how we can better engage, but also better manage those processes within some of the work that we do as well. And I think that's exactly what this conversation and training is really going to be about. And you notice I keep saying conversation, because more than just a training, what we are hoping to also do throughout the process of our time together is to really draw from your insights as well, and draw from your knowledge as well. So this is not a one-way traffic where we'll have presenters coming through to simply just make presentations, but we're looking to harness knowledge that is within this digital room, virtual room, to be able to see how do we build on each other to be able to gain deeper insights into some of these processes, and ensure that we are all able to be equipped and empowered to participate meaningfully into this process. So this civic electoral process training for promoting democracy and good governance is brought to you courtesy of ActionAid Zambia under the Promoting Meaningful Youth Participation in Zambia project. For short, we call it My Part, which is Meaningful Youth Participation. So the My Part project is an EU-funded project, a 3-year EU-funded project, whose objective is really to focus on strengthening and enhancing meaningful youth participation in Zambia. And this is being done through 3 major objectives. The first objective is around ensuring that we build the capacity of youth-led civil societies and movements in the country, and we're doing so through sub-granting mechanisms. The project has embarked on a process of identifying and onboarding civil society organizations who are youth-led, and targeting all the 10 provinces of Zambia to be able to capacitate them and provide sub-grants to them to ensure that they deliver and implement programs that will promote youth participation, meaningful youth participation, as it were, in civic, electoral, and economic processes of the country. The second, which is the second objective or second tier of the project, is something you probably may be familiar with to a great extent. Some of you that have already interacted with us around this project, which is with regards to the elements of the Youth Sounding Board. So we do have the first ever EU Youth Sounding Board that was launched earlier this year, particularly on the 19th of February. And through that, we have a cohort of 25 youth leaders that are going to provide structured engagement and advisory responsibilities, interactions with the European Union. And so this is the first ever youth sounding board with the EU in Zambia. And we're really excited about that, which is essentially meant to provide a model of what real meaningful youth participation must look like. And we hope that through the participation of the young people in EU programming, both in design and in the processes of implementation as well as evaluation. And so with that particular aspect, we then have the third component, which is the capacity building aspect. So I'm just giving a brief overview of what the project on promoting meaningful youth participation is all about and what it does, just so we are familiar with that. And we'll be hearing a little bit more about that as we interact. Interesting to note is that we actually have some of our youth sounding board members on this training call. And so we will also be looking forward to interacting with them through the course of our participation. But without further ado, as we get started this morning with our training, we'll just go into a moment of setting the scene to just be able to appreciate the overarching purpose of this meeting, and also just to understand the strategic viewpoint of ActionAid in terms of where we stand as an institution and why this is important, why this training, why at such a critical moment as this, and why for young people, essentially. And so to help us do that this morning, I would like to invite to take the mic Geoffrey Sizala, who is our Business and Development Manager at ActionAid Zambia, to be able to give us the welcoming remarks and set the scene for us for this meeting, and then we'll go right into our first session afterwards. So Geoffrey, you have the floor, and a warm welcome to you.
Thank you very much, Benjamin, and good morning, everyone. As ActionAid, we are so grateful that we have this opportunity to interact with each one of you. On behalf of the country director, I am privileged to come and just set the tone, and basically also to welcome you to this training, which is very critical.
Geoffrey, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes, Geoffrey, can you hear you?
Okay. Can you still hear me? Please confirm.
Yes, Geoffrey.
Okay, thank you. I was saying I'm so grateful that I have the privilege to come and just do the welcoming remarks.
It looks like we have a technical challenge there. Geoffrey, we seem not to be able to hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Maybe it's Benjamin's side, but I can hear you from this end.
Okay. The other participants can hear him. Okay, great. Thanks.
Okay, thank you very much. I just wanted to say that I am so grateful once again for this opportunity that I have the privilege to welcome all of you on behalf of the country director to this wonderful and very important meeting, which speaks to issues around civic participation, civic electoral processes, promote good governance and good democracy and good governance. Just allow me before I probably officially open this meeting, just to give a context in terms of why civic electoral process is very important. Zambia has got two tiers of governance. We have national and also we have civic. From the ActionAid point of view, why we focus on civic is to promote the participation of the marginalized people in rural areas, to participate especially in local governments. If you look at the decentralization policy, speaks of development of functions, resources, and structures to local level. Currently, under the current regime, there has been intention to devolve funds to local level, so that at least they be development. But devolving funds alone requires vigorous participation of everyone in the electoral processes. We have various structures. We have ward development committees. We have district development committees, provincial development committees, and also NDCs. So these structures require the participation of all people And in order for us to participate, requires that also we have an electoral process that promotes citizen participation regardless of their locality and stuff like that. For me, just one of the takeaway on the civic participation is that this opportunity, this training you have should speak to the need for you to participate and also empower citizens at local level to participate in this governance structure without fear and favor. And therefore, you make sure that everyone, regardless of their age and also status in society, they are able to participate. And now, when we come to democracy, democracy has got also principles. People should be free to assemble, to associate, and to express themselves. And these principles, they are enshrined in the democracy tenets. So when we come also to issues around good governance got principles. It should be transparent, it should be inclusive, it should be also accountable, it should also respond to the needs of the people, and also it should be make sure that it's basically it does not discriminate. There are a number of principles that speaks to issues around governance. So this training, I just hope that it is going to speak to those principles I've talked about, from the civic participation, from the democracy principles, and also good governance principles. As ActionAid, our core is that as you take this information, you shall be good ambassadors in your areas where you reside to train more people and also share with us how you are making an impact in your locality. I once again just welcome you and also to appreciate the project team who have dedicated their time to train you. I'll come and join again when I have time. Unfortunately, I have to jump into another meeting, but I'm so grateful and wishing you the best. The meeting now is officially opened. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much, Geoffrey, for those opening remarks and indeed for setting the tone for us in terms of the purpose statement for this meeting. And thank you for highlighting, very importantly, the overarching principles that we are looking to use in terms of our conversation in this meeting regarding civic participation, democracy, and good governance. And so once again, we want to say thank you to Geoffrey, and we will go now into our main discussion. We would like to now go into our first session, and just to be able to do that, I would like to, first of all, take a moment to bring to the fore the team that is behind this, just so you understand who is behind this training and who you'll be working with and interacting with for the rest of the day. Geoffrey did mention the project team, and so it will be important for you to know who you will be interacting with throughout this morning. So my name is Benjamin Mwape, and I'm the project lead for Promoting Meaningful Youth Participation Project, which we have already spoken to and highlighted, and I'll be one of the presenters for this morning's session. Let me invite my colleague to also introduce herself.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Vivian Chibelushi, and I'm the Youth Advisory Project Officer on the Meaningful Youth Participation, in short, MyPart project, which is organizing this wonderful information sharing session. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining, but also just to honorary mention to our colleagues from other projects who are also supporting this particular training. We have colleagues from the CSO Strengthening Project, as well as the SPA2 project. They are in collaboration with us to make this information sharing possible. So a round of applause to them as well for collaborating with us and just for sharing their insights with us and for making this training possible. Thank you so much, everybody. Thank you for joining, and I'm really hoping to interact with everybody. I hope we all get a chance to take away something from this session, and please feel free to also speak up. This is not a one-way conversation like Benjamin earlier alluded. We want to have a space where we can all discuss, because these are issues that pertain all of us. issues of civic and electoral processes to promote democracy and good governance. These are definitely issues that we all have a hand in. So without saying much, thank you so much again. I will allow Benjamin to take us through the first segment of our session. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much, Vivian, for that, and also thank you for highlighting the rest of the team that is involved in this. So, colleagues, we will begin our discussion and begin to deep dive into the main purpose why we're here. And remember, like I keep reiterating, this is a conversation. When we did the introductions in the chat, I highly appreciate the dynamics in the room. I highly appreciate the energy and the different individuals and the resource and the knowledge that you already bring to this training. And so we want to harness all of that and ensure that we are all drawing from each other in terms of the knowledge in the room. The first part of our conversation is really to just be able to appreciate the fundamentals of civic participation, active citizenship, but very importantly, and this is something that we will spend a little bit of time on, is to be able to understand why all of this is important. But beyond that, we want to determine in a way the cost of non-participation, because sometimes it is one thing to know what all of these things are about, and it's all important to know what can be done, but we don't flip the lens to be able to see what would be the cost of that not happening. What is the cost of young people not participating actively and meaningfully in civic and electoral processes within Zambia? And so we will spend a bit of time and discussion around just determining the cost of that, or the cost of non-participation. And hopefully that through that conversation, we will then be able to take that message to the rest of our constituents of different young people in terms of why this matters. And I think that's the message that we want to go out with away from this conversation, is why does this matter? We can sit here and speak to all the principles, speak to all the jargon and the language, but at the end of the day, the question is, why does it matter? And that's the heartbeat that I want us to leave this meeting with. The heartbeat is to go out there with a sense of urgency, with a sense of responsibility to why this matters and why we must be able to pass it on and share it with others as well. As we begin, let's start on a reflective note. And I want us to just take a moment to reflect on this question. If you were the president of Zambia for one day, what is the one thing that you would immediately change? If you were the president of Zambia for one day, what is the one thing you would immediately change? The question is on the screen, and I would like us to take a moment to reflect on that. It's a good starting point for us because we'll be coming back to some of the issues that you raised in response to this question. But let's take a minute to just first of all reflect on that. If you were the president of Zambia for one day, what is the one thing you would immediately change? And once you have your answer, feel free to drop it in the chat. Once you have your answer, feel free to drop it in the chat. And remember, you could want to change many things and you could want to change them over time, but what is the one major thing that you would want to change immediately? And remember, you only have one day to be president. So this should be like a very legacy a change, or a change that will really have a ripple effect once you have effected it. What is the one thing that you would want to change? All right, so feel free to drop your answers in the chat. It can be a description, it can just be a statement, it can just be one line. Thank you, Michelle. Right, so Michelle says she would prioritize creating more opportunities for young people with little to no experience. All right, so issues of youth employment there, we can already see is a big issue. So we can already identify youth employment as something that is a priority and important to Michelle. All right. Mutiti says more empowerment and opportunities for the youth. Okay, great. It would be interesting to also just share exactly how that would happen. So Revi says, I would change our legal system from a dual legal system to a strictly statutory system. Interesting. That's very interesting, Revi. So Revi would go all the way to use her powers of being a president for one day to just shift the legal system from a dual system to strictly a statutory system. Okay, let's keep a couple of them coming. What would you do with your powers as a president for one day? What is the one thing you would change, and that is something that you want to immediately change? Frida says, I would focus on strengthening accountability in public service and the use of public resources. So remember, you only have one day. So I'm looking for the change that you can do in one day, and it will be a game changer. You only have powers as a president for one day. What is that one drastic change that you are going to make? I would strongly make domestic resource mobilization effective. All right. So Dali Sopiri is focusing on domestic resource mobilization in one day. Hopefully that's achievable. All right. I would transfer civil servants loans from lending institutions to Bank of Zambia, that they start paying a maximum of 500 and create a youth lab to enhance innovation and creativity. Okay, great. So that's what Felix would do in one day. Tracer says, I would bring back the spirit of Ubuntu. People make up a nation. All right, very interesting. Let's go a few more reflections on that. As an agricultural graduate, I know one day is not enough to transform the sector, but it is enough to make sure government listens to farmers, prioritizes irrigation, and commits resources to food security and climate resilience. That's very interesting, Maimbolwa. So Maimbolwa is focusing on government's attention to the farmers and being able to listen to them. I'll take about 3 more before we go into the next conversation. So please feel free to keep posting, and we'll probably come back to some of these later on as well. Catherine says, I would ensure that the youth are well equipped in terms of education, skills, training, entrepreneurship, and civic service employment. Remember, the youth are the future of the nation. All right, so they're actually both the present and the future. Janet says, I would appoint a technical working group from a cross-stakeholder to dissect the vulnerability of youth from the ground up to ensure each youth challenge is addressed according to the needs. I would ban the export of minerals in their raw form. And Mtonga says, I would like CDF office to stand alone without counsel to reduce corruption. All right, let me read the very last one. And that's from Mr. Banda MCZ. Enact a law that would promote industrialization in all the districts. All right, thank you so much. Very interesting again to see the diversity of what people are thinking and reflecting on in as far as their ability to have the powers, the presidential powers, to be able to do that. So now the conversation is very important because it is helping us to first of all set the scene for what we are going to be talking about throughout the rest of our time. And you can already see that all of us here, given that chance to make that change happen, we would do something about it. We would make the change happen. We just don't probably think we have the power to do so because we were thinking, oh, if I'm the president, I would do that. I would do that, because the question was phrased that way. But guess what? I would like to let you know that you actually already have the power. You don't have to necessarily be the president to make some of that change happen. There are many other alternative ways you can make that change happen. If you're familiar with ActionAid's ways of working and modalities of working, one of the statements you would have probably come across very often is people power. And that's exactly what, the fundamental principles of democracy are all about. It's about ensuring that the power to make change happen remains with the people. So oftentimes, we see things through the lens of those that have the power, the duty bearers, but we need to understand that as rights holders, we actually do already have the power to make change happen to some of the extent. Of course, there could be barriers to some of that power. There could be limitations to some of that power, but there is a place from where we can start. And one of those places we can start is through civic engagement or civic participation, as it were. And so you see the connection. One of the things then that helps us to begin to make that change happen, we may not necessarily be the president, you may not necessarily be the member of parliament in your constituency, you may not be the ward councillor, but you do have an opportunity to start from somewhere. And that place is through civic participation. And that is why civic participation becomes very important, especially for young people. One of the comments that was put in the chat there is that the recognition that young people are a significant constituency of our population. We know by common knowledge of our statistics now that young people make up the majority of our population. We have one of the greatest demographic dividend dynamics in history, where as most of African countries, Zambia included, we have young people as the greater population of our countries. But the sad reality is that while young people form the major part of the population or the majority of the population, they do not seem to have the real power, or they do not seem to be sitting at the right seats to be able to make the change that they want to happen for them happen. And so that is an anomaly that we need to continue to begin to change the narrative to ensure that if young people are the majority, then they need to be able, to have the voice that they deserve, as it were. But we see that they continue to be marginalized. They continue to face structural barriers to participate meaningfully in various processes. And that is why we keep emphasizing that it must be meaningful participation and not just participation for the sake of it. So let's then go into a bit of some definitions as to what civic participation really is. So civic participation refers to the ways individuals engage in activities that improve their communities and influence public decisions. Remember, we just from talking about how if you are the president, what would you change? And we all said the things that we would change if we had power in one day as a president to change something. But we need to understand that you don't have to wait for that power. You can still begin to create effect. You can still begin to make that change happen through civic participation and active citizenship. And so civic participation then is the ways individuals or citizens engage in activities that will ultimately improve their communities and influence public decisions. And there we have a couple of examples of how that can be done. One of them is obviously through voting. It is through community meetings. And this is something that sometimes works and sometimes doesn't, including voting itself. Right now, we're going into the election period, and we'll be going to the polls in August this year. And there is already some predictions that there might be some voter apathy, especially even among young people. And the reason is because of various reasons why young people feel, oh, I don't have to be proactive in voting. Remember, I said at the beginning that we'll talk about the cost of non-participation. What would it cost? What will it cost us if we are not participating? So voting is one of them. Community meetings are some of them. When there's a meeting called up within your community at a ward level, at a constituency level, how many young people would take a keen interest to say, let me go in and participate? One of the other major ways you can begin to make change happen as an individual through civic participation is through engagement in youth advocacy. And there are many of us on this platform that are already doing that, but we need more and more young people that will take a proactive role, that will be more interested in youth advocacy engagements. And these could take various forms and shapes. Within the youth sounding board cohort that we have, that I made mention of at the beginning, the 25 young people, young leaders that are interfacing with the European Union delegation. One of the notable things we have among them is that a number of them are proactively using their social media spaces or their digital platforms to engage in concrete youth advocacy. They have identified a niche, a subject of their passion, whether it's on climate change, whether it's on governance, whether it's on democracy, and they're beginning to hone in on that and using their platforms to be able to engage in youth advocacy. On one hand, you have other young people that are using their digital spaces and platforms for all sorts of things that I will not mention here for the sake of peace. But you know how that young people, will use their social media platforms for all various kinds of issues. But how about if we had, 5 million young people in Zambia using their digital spaces to speak to the same issue? Surely, at some point, that critical voice and critical mass will begin to have an effect if every other young person begins to take an interest to look at how they can utilize civic participation, or they can engage in civic participation using their digital spaces for youth advocacy. You will find that at some point, that voice will begin to be noticed. It will not go unnoticed, and at some point, it will be heard. Another way we can engage in civic participation is by volunteering. And again, this is another one way we can do that. There was conversations on the chat around trying to transform youth employment or deal with the issue of youth unemployment. And I think the comment there was actually how that we need to be able to facilitate opportunities for young people who have little to no experience. If I remember correctly, that's what it was referring to. And again, a very strong reality, or a very lived experience of many young Zambians, which is that we go to school, get education, and then we go into the marketplace or the industry, and we are told, oh, you need to be able to have 5 years experience, you need to have 3 years experience for you to get this opportunity. But the question that is always asked is, if I never get a chance, when will I then get the experience? If I never get my foot into the door, when will I then gather this experience that you're asking for? So logically, at some point, I need to be given a chance first to be able to build this experience. And then the next opportunity should be able to now ask me, do you have 3 years experience, and so on and so forth. And I think one of the ways that that experience can be built, that experience can be accumulated, is through voluntary work. Again, we have case studies of some of the young people that we've worked with, even under ActionAid, who started out as volunteers on some of the projects, and today they've been able to build a case of experience through all of those. All right. A couple of other ways that we can engage in civic participation, other than voting, community meetings, youth advocacy, volunteering. We could also use public consultations or engage in public consultations. Oftentimes, you will see these consultations happening, whether being led by civil society organizations or other stakeholders. These are strategic entry points where young people need to take interest to be able to want to go in and be part of these trainings, or rather part of these public consultations. Another way is through petitioning leaders, something that, again, we need to sensitize more citizens on. We need to be able to help citizens understand their rights in as far as what is available to them, and petitioning leaders is one of those. Social accountability initiatives is another very important element that we would like to speak to as well. peace building activities, a very important aspect that we need to discuss here, because remember that there are rights and there are responsibilities. They go hand in hand. So we're not just focusing on rights only. We're not just going to demand for our rights, but we have to demand for those rights with responsibilities. So peace building activity is very critical, because we don't want to then also create problems whilst trying to solve another problem. A very practical example of rights and responsibility is the fact that as a young person or as a young leader, you have the right to vote. You have the right to participate in an election, but the responsibility is you are responsible to vote peacefully, or you are responsible for maintaining peace as you vote, or you are responsible for upholding peace as you vote. You have the right to the freedom of expression, but that freedom of expression also necessitates a responsibility for you to be able to do that responsibly in a manner that does not also create its own problems and challenges. So peace building and the conversation around peace is really a very important one. I think maybe at some point when Bibian comes to do a session, she'll probably also speak to the issues of peace and responsibility. So this is what civic participation is, and some of the examples of what that looks like. In line with that, let's now also talk about active citizenship. So active citizenship is the practice exercising one's rights and responsibilities to contribute positively to society. An active citizen is one ideally that must be informed, that participates in decision making, respects diversity, holds leaders accountable, promotes justice and inclusion. So again, this is basically just a fundamental overview of what active citizenship looks like, and what are some of the things that we expect from one who is an active citizen. I'm rushing through these slides because I'm interested and looking forward to us beginning to talk to each other and have a conversation more than just me sharing the slides. And so I want us to then take that moment now to be able to have that conversation, and we're going to go into a discussion, and the discussion is really around what are some of the ways young people in Zambia can influence change without being elected leaders. Yes, being an elected leader is one of the ways you can make change happen, but there are many other ways you can make change happen as a young person in Zambia, even when you are not an elected leader. That speaks to general civic participation, as it were. So please feel free to either drop that in the chat, or at this point, we may allow people to speak through the mic as well. So if you are able to raise your hand, we will get you to speak through the mic as well. Remember, the question is, what are some of the ways young people in Zambia can influence change without being elected leaders? All right, so feel free to indicate your hand if you want to contribute, and we'll be able to take you on the mic, but also you can use the chat to be able to make your contributions and your comments. What are some of the ways young people in Zambia can influence change without being elected leaders? All right, so let's take a comment from Teresa.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning, Mr. Benjamin. My name is Njavwa Teresa, but I'm from Limitless Foundation. I feel one of the ways that I've seen that have worked, and that might continue to work for us as young people, even when we're not elected into power, advocacy is like one of the key things. I'll give one practical example. I think our organization and other organizations such as Sister Foundation and YWCA, we took up a case of government providing free sanitary towels for the girl children in public schools. Of course, it didn't happen overnight. It was a battle, but through the advocacy, calling on government here and there, putting up police briefs, calling on government through different platforms, gave us that which we are calling for. And I feel this is a big win for the girl child especially those that are in public schools, because one of the impacts of not having sanitary towels was that they would miss out on school. But then now, since that government provides for them for the whole term, this brings about change, and none of us had to be elected leaders in order for us to bring about that sort of change. So I feel advocacy is one of the key tools that we can use, because it helps us also to do a lot of checks and balances with the government. Thank you. I submit.
Awesome. Thank you so much. That's a very detailed reflection and a very practical one as well, Teresa. Thank you so much for sharing that with us. And it really speaks to some of the realities that we do not in terms of our work, and how we can use that to be able to engage better. All right, Mr. Banda, you have the floor.
Thank you so much. One of our ways that we could be able also to use is maybe I would simply say active stakeholders engagement and advocacy. Citing an example of in 2024, getting to 2025, like here in Nakonde district, we had a situation where after even the increase of the CDF to our constituencies, we still had challenges of young people getting access to the grant and so forth. So what we did is, as a district, we engaged the civic leaders and did part of our activities that were to do with advocacy, so that we could have our very own young people to be representing their fellow young people in that committee, so that we can be able to see the impact of also meaning the consideration of young people also be able to get to take part into the discussion of when they are talking about empowering young people. We are talking about giving grant to the communities or to the clubs. How many young people have been considered in the list of those that have been given the grant? So at that particular time, we had a challenge where you find that on the whole entire list of maybe 70 people that have been given grants, we only find 2 to 3 young people that are there. So we used advocacy and active civic engagement to make sure that we have our own young people that happens to be in that particular committee. And this is what even gave us, some of us, a privilege to be the representative of young people in the CDF committee, to be able to speak for them in that particular committee, where we are able to count to simply say, among the 30 or 70 young people that you have considered for the grant, how many young people have you considered here? So it gave us a hand also to speak for ourselves. So it was through advocacy that we did, and active stakeholders engagement that we did as the Nakonde. That's what led us to get to that far. Thank you so much. That's what I wanted to make a contribution.
Amazing, amazing. All the way from Nakonde, we have a very interesting case in point there. And what I love, before we take any other comments, please, if you want to make a comment, just indicate by raising your hand or putting a comment in the chat, and we'll pick your comment soon. But what I love from that conversation from Nakonde is, yes, advocacy and active citizenship, citizen engagement. But then what I love about that story is what it led to. How that you started out from a place that was seemingly looking like you don't have much leverage or room to influence change, but by being active and engaging in civic participation, you now are sitting on a committee that is able to now directly influence decisions and policies. So we're able to see also that there is a starting point. And usually civic participation is that starting point where the bigger change that we may want to make by sitting at the table of decision making would have to start by us proactively participating as active citizens, being active citizens and building on that to be able to eventually find a seat at the table. But sometimes you would not even have to find the seat at the table. By just being an active citizen, your voice as a rights holder your awareness as a rights holder, your voice as a rights holder being amplified to the duty bearers, they begin to recognize that these are active citizens, they know their rights, they understand their responsibilities, and these are some of the things that they're bringing to us, and we need to engage them better. So thank you so much for sharing that with us. I think there was a hand from, okay, I'd seen a hand, but it has dropped. So if you would want to speak, you may want to just raise your hand again so that I pick you and give you the floor. Yes, it was Reston. So please, Reston Ngosa, you have the floor.
Thank you very much. My name is Reston Ngosa from Chitambo Development Foundation. One of the ways that we actually participate as people in the district is that we engage the member of parliament by attending one-on-one meetings with the MP. We are able to walk into the office, make appointments, and try and influence their decisions on certain bills and acts and bylaws that actually are taking place in the district. You know, Chitambo being a newly created district, most of the systems and the infrastructure is not yet in place. So we try and advocate for a clear policy. For instance, like Chitambo district did not have water from 2012, the time that it was actually declared the district. It is only out of advocacy that now a borehole was sunk. But even when the borehole was sunk, there is no water distribution to the CBD of the new district. So we are advocating through the Ward Development Committee, through the members of parliament, and through the councillors to ensure that the CBD has clean water and sanitation, because this is key. And being a new district, they should not be seen to be inheriting old problems that actually exist in the older municipalities. They should learn from the old municipalities and the problems that they've actually created themselves due to lack of planning. This is one of the ways that we actually engage with the civic leaders without being elected members in these bodies. And besides that, we also take part in the public hearings and all submissions that are actually made in relation to laws and bylaws that take place. And above all, we sensitize the youth, the women, and the disabled to ensure that they feel inclusive in the decision-making process, specifically in the award of like the CDF grants, so that they also feel empowered and move their poverty levels and improve their lives. So that is how we actually participate as non-elected members of the society in Chitambo districts. That's my submission. Thank you.
Thank you so much. That's a very interesting one. And also just to be able to see the fruit of that. Of course, it's work in progress. There's still more that we may want our leaders to deliver on, but I think you can see that there's already some success that has been achieved by that. And one of the things we highlighted in the presentation was around social accountability. And that's exactly what Mr. Reston is really highlighting in his example, social accountability. There's so much power in that particular aspect. Various kinds of social accountability initiatives. There's so much power within that. If rights holders are empowered and given knowledge and made aware, of their rights and responsibilities, they can begin to create change using social accountability. So that's a very powerful case in point of what is happening in Chitambo. I'm already excited about how we're drawing from different regions of our country, examples from Nakonde, examples from Chitambo, all giving us perspectives. And of course, that's very important because the dynamics are different. What somebody on the Copper Belt, what somebody in Southern Province could be dealing with would be different from place to place. And please keep sharing with us some of your own lived experiences and initiatives that you're working on within your regions. They will help us to be able to just appreciate the dynamics of how these things work. I'll take a few more hands. If you would want to speak through the mic, just keep your hand lifted. But I want to turn just now to the chat box and read some of the comments that have been shared by some of our colleagues there. But if you want to speak through the mic, just lift your hand and I'll come back to you in a moment. So Doreen Musele says, one of the ways is through history. We can continue to see how young people influenced change just by them being the majority youths. Just by them being the majority youths have continued to influence change through voting. For example, during UNIP's time, young people had to come together to ensure a change of government through voting Chiluba into power. And young people spearheaded that also by peaceful protests and advocacy. All right. Frida says, young people can form community groups, youth networks, and advocacy campaigns to address local challenges such as unemployment, poor sanitation, environmental degradation, corruption, or limited access to services. Collective action often attracts the attention of decision makers and can lead to policy and practical changes even without holding office. Young people can use radio programs, community dialogues, social media, youth clubs, and civil society platforms to discuss governance issues, educate others on their rights, and promote peaceful and issue-based engagements. Awesome. Catherine says, as you mentioned earlier on the positive use of social media, I feel platforms such as TikTok, Instagram, and Facebook can be utilized to raise awareness, speak about injustices in our communities, and launch petitions. Such platforms catch the attention of our leaders and push them to respond to the needs of the public. Youths love social media and can use social media or content like podcasts, videos to influence public opinions and policy discussions on civic responsibility and issues affecting them. Participating in public consultations, this is from Tonga Mwango, attend community meetings, World Development Committee meetings, and public hearings to voice concerns and suggest solutions. Using social media responsibly, share information, educate others, and encourage discussions on important social and national issues. Charity says, we as young people can influence change even by the little things we can do, whether it's starting a club, movement that will lead to change. It could be volunteering for our community and so on. And then Mtonga again says, protests, we can protest against the government. Revise says, without being an elected leader, you can provide the people in your community with the necessary information to better inform their voting decisions and put the right leaders in power who can make the right changes for better community. Very, very interesting submissions there that are coming through, and I think they all really speak to the various ways, the myriad of opportunities that we have as young people, as young leaders, as active citizens, to be able to influence change or to make change happen, even when we are not elected leaders. There's been a lot of comment around the use of social media, and I was recently following through a very interesting story of a video. Some of you have seen that video of a Toyota Vitz that was captured with two people in the back, and they seem to be fighting, or at least one seemed to be beating the other. And so a video of that was circulating on social media for quite some time. And initially it was ignored. I think one or two people shared it. They raised concern that they were driving in front of this vehicle, and there was seemingly somebody being beaten in that vehicle. And when it was initially shared, it was just, one or two people that shared it. But then eventually it began to gain traction, and a few other people shared, and then several others shared it. And before you know it, the last time I checked, the police had actually launched an investigation into that particular incident and what exactly was happening. And I think the number plate of that vehicle was also captured in that video. And some of the people who were posting were tagging RATSA and asking them to quickly check from their system who is the owner of that vehicle. That was probably a social injustice that was happening there in the vehicle. And just by use of social media, that issue has been amplified, and some action is already being taken towards that. I wanted to also just weigh in on one of the last things that Revai has said here about the responsibility for us to also pass this knowledge onto our communities. As active citizens who may not necessarily be elected leaders, we still have the responsibility, especially for those of us that have the privilege to access some of this information. We have the responsibility to be able to then also pass this information to others. Just as we are having this conversation now, one of the things we're hoping is that by you being part of this online conversation, you will also then take an interest to be able to share this with others within your constituents, within your networks, within your different groupings. And very importantly so, one of the concerns that we have around the electoral process and civic engagement now are issues around disinformation and misinformation. And we're already beginning to see this happen. But I want you to understand also that one of the unique things we have in this year's election is the emergency of artificial intelligence, which was not so prevalent in the previous election and in the past election. And I want us to just take a moment to reflect on this. So artificial intelligence is upon us, and there is so much power within that, facility and what can be done within it. But whilst it is good for technological advancement and for progress, it also poses several challenges. And some of those challenges come upon the electoral process and the civic engagement process. You will now find that it's easy to doctor videos, to doctor pictures, images, and put a false image out there just simply by using artificial intelligence. Somebody can, or various tools, AI tools, somebody can easily put up like the picture was taken in real life when it wasn't. You see a video of a leader, a candidate, and it could have so many different aspects to it. In fact, I was looking at a campaign. I think it's being done by, if I'm not mistaken, the Young Women in Action or so, and they were showing how that could become even worse for particularly women contestants, women leaders who are contesting, in that they can be mad with all kinds of malice using artificial intelligence videos that are doctored and so on and so forth. So we expect to see some of these things happen at a very escalated rate. Disinformation will be very high, misinformation will be very high, propagated by artificial intelligence. Now, the greater concern around that also is that some of the people that are vulnerable to be misled more than others are the first time voters, will be the first time voters. And we know the majority of the first time voters are young people. So again, as we have this conversation, food for thought, we have a lot of first time voters who are young people. They're excited to vote for the first time. They're looking forward to their first experience of participating in an election. But then on the other hand, you have the rise of artificial intelligence that is also, in a way, creating more challenges around disinformation and misinformation. And so again, we need the more reason why these conversations are important, and the more reason why people like us who are participating in these conversations should not keep this information to ourselves, but must ensure that beyond these online trainings, beyond these online discussions, we then are able to go back in our communities and begin to pass this information. One of the things we're actually looking to do under the My Part project is to be able to very soon you'll see we'll be launching a campaign, a digital campaign around disinformation and misinformation. With that in mind, with that knowledge in mind, that we are dealing with young people that are first-time voters and they're vulnerable to being misled with some of the information that is going out there. So thank you so much, everyone, for sharing some of those very practical ways in which we can still make change happen, even though we are not necessarily elected voters. With a few minutes that I have before we transition, I want us to go into another very quick conversation. And I mentioned at the beginning that one of the things I am looking for us to talk about and just really reflect on is the cost. So we've established and understood the importance of why we need to participate, but I want us to take it a step further and just begin to reflect on what is the cost when young people disengage from civic and electoral processes. What would that look like for Zambia and for democracy in general? What would that look like? What is the cost when young people disengage from civic and electoral processes? So again, I will invite your reflections on that, and you could do that either through the chat or you could do that through raising your hand and just speaking to the mic. But I want you to look at it from either your community, your sub-national level experiences, but also nationally at a national level. What would it cost us if young people are disengaged from civic and electoral processes? What would be the cost for that? And when I say cost, I'm basically asking for the consequences, for the damage that would cause. What would then happen if we had young people disengaged from electoral processes, if we had young people disengaged from participating meaningfully in these civic processes? So let's spend a bit of time here to just determine that cost, and it will be probably something that we would sort of curate and put together your feedback and comments, and be able to probably make an infographics out of it, or really just make some sort of visual pictorial essence of what you would have submitted from this conversation. So again, feel free to use the comment section, the chat section, as well as the mic. If you would want to speak through the mic, you can just lift your hand and we'll give you the floor. But if you want to comment, you can do so in the chat box. What is the cost? What would be the cost if young people are disengaged from civic and electoral processes? It's a very important question, so I do know that we may need a bit of time to reflect over it and think through it, and that's totally fine. So let's just take a minute or so to just reflect and ask ourselves, what would that look like? Think about it in your community. And it's probably happening in some instances. You're probably in a community where young people actually already disengaged from civic and electoral processes, and we're already beginning to see the effects of that. So you could also just share with us what is already happening for those of you that are living in communities where young people are disengaged, but you could also share with us what you think the cost of non-participation would look like in your community and in the nation as a whole. All right, so let's take Teresa Bwali again, and we can pick it up from there. You have the floor, Teresa. Hi, Teresa, you have the floor?
Yes, I was waiting for my mic to be enabled.
Oh, okay, great.
Thank you. Yes. I could think of a few examples, and maybe I'll start with the electoral process. I think we also what happened in 2021. Before the elections, Zambia had defaulted on our debt repayment. We were swinging in unsustainable debt as a country. We had a lot of challenges that we could pick out, and it took young people to come together and agree to say we need a change of government. And my thought right now is that what would have happened if we are not engaged in such processes, such as the electoral process, would probably be still fighting with the crazy inflation that we had seen, the instability of the exchange rate and things like that, which now when we look at, I'm not saying we are at a better place, but then I'm just here debating within myself, saying if we didn't have the change of government and if young people just let the electoral process be run by other people apart from the young people ourselves, would have probably be in more problems right now. And then the other thing that I can't help but think about is in line with the environment. I'm very passionate when it comes to environmental issues. We are the ones that were likely to live longer than the older generation. Not trying to send people to the Heavenly Father quite early, but then I'm just here thinking, if bad decisions are made where our environment is concerned, where we have sustainable mining happening, the people who are likely to deal with the impact and the effects of what that would bring about are the young people. So if we stay away from advocacy or engaging in civic conversations around environmental protection, environmental management, will bear the burden of the impacts. We may not feel them right now, but then because we are the younger people and we are under normal circumstances, we are likely to be here longer than the older generation, will be the ones to bear the burden and the impact and the effects that would come about. The last example that I would give, last year we came together when there was a high number of defilement cases, and we did a national protest. We were marching and all, and we saw cabinet coming up and putting up certain policies that we now feel have the ability. We cannot score yet in terms of impact, but then they have the ability to put a stop to defilement and rape cases. For me, what would have happened if we stayed back and said, no, we need to mind our own business. It's not my child that has been defiled. It's not my sister. It's not my son who's been sodomized. The impact would be that if we stayed disengaged, is that there would not be anything that government would have done about it. So my overall conclusion on this is that when we stay away, we increase the burden and the negative impact that would have to deal with 5-10 years from now as young people, because we are likely to be the ones who still be there when things are now bearing fruits from the decisions that have been made in the now moment. Thank you so much. I submit.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Teresa, and very insightful reflections that you provide there. And I totally agree with you. One of the things that we must constantly think about as young people and as young leaders is the fact that every decision that is being made now, we are the ones who are going to live in the reality of its outcome. We will be the ones paying the price. If it's bad decisions that are being made now, the people that are making them, who are older than us, will not live through those decisions for the longest time more than we do. So we will have to live with the consequences of that more ourselves than the ones that are making those decisions. And so that should actually propel all of us to really take a keen interest to say, how do I get involved now? I don't want to come when it's my time to lead, or when I don't want to be paying the price for something that I was not involved, in making the decisions for. So thank you for that. Anyone else who wants to take the mic before I go to the messages in the chat? If you'd like to speak through the mic, it'll be good to hear a few more voices. Please, by show of hand, and then we'll go to the comments in the chat. Anna Banda, you have the floor. Anna Banda, you have the floor.
Yeah, good morning. If young people are not engaged in civic and electoral processes, I personally feel like there'll be less accountability with our leaders because there's nobody to hold them accountable. Decisions that are made, the actions and maybe public funds that will be used will be misused. So if we're not there to take part and engage, then there'll be less accountability. And also I personally feel like maybe there'll be even just the policies and the laws that are made do not reflect the needs and the priorities of young people. As the saying goes, if you're not at the table, then you'll be on the menu. So we as young people need to take part in order for us to just push the government to maybe even enact laws and policies that reflect on the needs and the priorities of us young people.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that reflection, and Anna as well. And of course, it also very well resonates with an important aspect, the weak accountability. If we disengage as young people, if there's no engagement from young people, there will be weak accountability. Awesome. Let's take another comment from Reston Ngosa, and then we'll go to the chat.
Yeah, thank you for the opportunity to contribute to this question. We know that the adage that the young people are the young today are the future leaders. So if the young today are not given or sensitized to take part in civic education, in civic activities, we are going to have a poor leadership who do not understand and are able to engage their leaders to be accountable to the rights holders. In the sense that if the youths are not sensitized to hold their leaders accountable, they are not going to become effective citizens even as they grow up. Like in Chitambo district, we have a lot of youths who keep complaining that our leaders are not doing the right thing, or maybe our councillors are not helping us. But then we go out and sensitize them to say, did you know that you have a right to certain things that you are actually complaining about? It is your natural human right to be availed certain services, to be availed the freedom that you need. So if you are going to just be complaining in your room or in the bush, it won't help you. Can you come to the table? Can you engage your traditional leaders? Can your traditional leaders speak to the civic authorities through the public gatherings so that they influence issues that affect the youth, the marginalized, and everyone else who is affected? And so we are seeing some sort of drive where the young people are realizing that, oh, actually, we can speak out and we can be heard. So basically, if young people are not educated or sensitized by taking part or having a voice at the table of the rules and regulations that happen either in the traditional system and in the political system and even in the education sector, we are always advocating for these young people to ensure that they participate in issues that actually affect them. Because it is by participating as youths that they are going to grow up into responsible citizens, because they are going to hold the leaders accountable to the services that are being provided, to the delivery of justice, to the delivery of education. So we are going to have a very rich and educated youths who are going to be educated leaders in the future. So we are going to create a vacuum if we don't sensitize the youth today so that they become effective and youths or citizens that participate both in politics, in financial, in health, in education. We need to grow up a youth-led group that is all-rounded, educated, so that they know and are alert to everything that is happening in their environment, who are able to speak out so that they hold their leaders accountable. And that is how they are going to become accountable leaders if they take up leadership positions. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much again for those reflections, Reston. Very well submitted. And again, they really reflect some of the realities. And I keep loving that you are giving us very practical examples of what's happening in Chitambo? What are the lived realities and experiences of young people in Chitambo? Keep sharing those examples with us. We would love to hear, even from the others as well, what is really obtaining on the ground from where you are in as far as young people are concerned in civic participation. All right, let me take some of the comments that have been submitted in the chat. Sizwe says, I think that when young people disengage from civic participation and electoral processes, their voices and interests are often ignored, leading to poor representation, weaker democracy, and policies that may not address youth needs. Okay, Michelle says, if young people are disengaged, the community will lose out on having innovative ideas that could help shape a better future. If young people are disengaged from civic participation, Zambia may experience poor leadership choices, low voter turnout, reduced accountability, and slow community development because young people will not contribute their ideas and voices to decision-making processes. That's coming from Felix Sidilo. Revise says, when young people disengage from civic and electoral processes, the issues that need to be addressed in communities are not communicated to those in power, and that leads to decisions, and that leads to decisions being made based on inaccurate information. Catherine Lungu has a reflection on the cost and says the cost can be huge, as it would firstly imply an infringement on their rights because their voices would have been silenced. This would further result in the formation or introduction of policies that wouldn't reflect the interest of the youth. If young people disengage from civic participation and electoral processes, their voices and interests may not be represented in decision-making. This can weaken democracy and reduce accountability among leaders. Active youth participation is essential for positive change and national development. This is coming from David Banda. Mr. Banda then also adds and says, lack of youth consideration in job opportunities is one of the costs, lack of accountability, lack of youth participation in country developmental contribution, such as economical, human development, and etc. Doreen Musele says it leads to a minority public leadership, and we suffer effects because leaders tend to focus on active voter blocks, such as specific groups, maybe older generations, and due to disengagement leads to policy imbalance because there's nobody to advocate for the issues affecting the youth, thereby leading to deprioritized and unbalanced public economic and social policies, and also due to the distrust the youth have in public leadership. There's authoritarian vulnerability, as disengaged populations are easier to manipulate because the minority makes decisions without due accountability. Those are very, very interesting submissions that have been put through in the chat comments, and I do see how that all of them have got a different implication altogether, but the weight of it also is, varies. But I love the last aspect also that Doreen has brought out around authoritarianism and authoritarian rule. That is a very important aspect and very concerning for that. If people are disengaged, it becomes very easy for authoritarian leadership to rise within a democracy, because there's also a lack of accountability, but also people that are disengaged become very easy to manipulate. You make decisions on their behalf, and several decisions have been made. Before you know it, the people have lost their voice, the people have lost their power. Certain laws have been changed in favor of the duty bearers instead of being in favor of the rights holders. And so before you know it, there's a rise of authoritarian regimes and rules because the citizens were not active, the citizens were not engaged. So we've been talking about active citizenship and civic participation. We looked at the definitions of each of those, what it means, what it is. And I think the essence of this conversation is to really appreciate the fact that we don't have to be in an elected office to make change happen. It doesn't have to take us as individuals to be in an elected office to make change happen. We can start from civic participation. We can start from active citizenship. And through those processes, we will be able to still make change happen. If this message can go to every young person to understand the responsibility that they have to make change happen, even when they don't hold an elected office, but that they can do it through several means: protests, consultations, participating in various consultations, public consultations, and so on and so forth, volunteering, voting, and all the other things that were listed. Then we'll begin to see a critical mass of citizens who carry power, who hold power, or rights holders who hold real power to make change happen. And then we move our conversation to now deal with the cost. What will it cost if young people are not engaged, if young people are disengaged? What will it cost our country? What will it cost our communities? And there's so many reflections that have been shared both through the mic and in the chat of what that cost looks like. And like I said, we'll pick some of those things and add them into some infographics just to be able to give a pictorial or a visual impression of what the cost of disengagement of young people would look like. And hopefully, once we share that image, you could also share it with other young people. Then we'll begin to appreciate that we cannot but engage. We cannot but engage. We do not have sit on the sidelines and watch things happen. We must be active citizens, and we must engage more meaningfully and effectively in civic participation. Pause roundabout at this point, but what I want to do in the last few minutes I have as we transition into the next session that my colleague Bibian will be coming to lead is to just take a minute or so to ask you to write down again in the chat one thing that you are going to do with the information that you've gotten from this first session. Just one thing that you are going to do with the information you have gotten from this session. This time, we won't take it through the mics, so we'll ask everybody to just please post it in the chat box for a few minutes, just some reflections, and we'll be transitioning immediately afterwards into the next session. So in the next 2 minutes, the next voice you'll be hearing will be that of my colleague, B, who will be taking us into the next session. But whilst we transition, take the next 1-2 minutes to just share with us in the comment, what is the one thing you are going to do practically within your means, within your environment, to be able to share this information? What will you do with the information that you would have received from today's first session? For some reason, I'm not seeing the comments in the chat. Hopefully it's because people are typing. Otherwise, we need to start holding each other accountable right now. We've been talking about holding leaders accountable, but maybe we should hold each other accountable and ensure that we are also participating. So please feel free to post the comments in the chat in the next 2 minutes.
All right, we're getting into the second session. We had a very wonderful first session. I personally have learned a lot of talks about what happens when young people decide to disengage from the civic and electoral process. That was very insightful. Of course, we've learned that young people are the majority and our participation as young people is very key. And of course, to our participation also, there comes a conversation to do with our responsibilities as young people, even as we participate and engage in these processes. There's a way that, of course, is supposed to govern how we participate. There's some principles that, of course, govern how we engage in the civic and electoral processes in order for us to be more meaningful contributors of this process. So we are about to start sharing the second presentation, which I believe is visible now. All right, so the second session is about peaceful participation, rights and responsibilities of citizens. So of course, we've talked about what participation looks like for us as young people, and of course, the role that we play in democracy, and of course, making the civic space more inclusive. But now we want to shift our focus to what really peaceful participation, rights, and responsibilities really look like. So we'll begin by just defining what our learning outcomes look like. Of course, we want to get to a point where we explain what peaceful participation means in civic and electoral spaces, what that really looks like for us as young people. And number two, we want to also identify the key rights and responsibilities that we have as citizens in order for us to enjoy a more meaningful civic life. And thirdly, we want to discuss how we can apply peaceful, non-partisan, and evidence-based actions before, during, and after elections. The third point is very, very important because, of course, we need to be backed by evidence. Our participation also needs to be peaceful and also backed by evidence, especially when we start talking about advocacy, we start talking about using social media to voice out. We need to approach that very carefully and approach that from an evidence point of view. And then, of course, finally, practice respectful dialogue, misinformation control, and safe reporting. We've spoken about how AI is now on the rise. How do we ensure that we refrain from spreading misinformation? How do we collect evidence? And how do we make sure that before we share any information, it is actually valid and true? So just to kickstart this second part of our conversation, you can, I would like to request you to write in the chat what makes participation peaceful. What makes participation peaceful? We can take a few responses from the chat. Michelle has said respect. Yes, respect is a very fundamental principle when it comes to maintaining peace in the civic and electoral process. Respect is very important. Inclusion, yes, exactly, because if the electoral and civic process is not inclusive and certain groups of people, especially us as young people, whenever we feel excluded, we tend to revolt and we tend to feel like we're being sidelined, and that, of course, disrupts the peace. Accountability, Chimwemwe says accountability. Yes, accountability is very, very important. Our leaders need to be held accountable, and they need, and again, accountability goes hand in hand with transparency. There's needs for accountability and transparency in order for the electoral process to actually be peaceful. Assertiveness, yes, that's true, of course. Thank you so much, everyone, for participating. We'll move on to the next slide. So peaceful participation is not silence. So again, as young people, we have this eagerness to really participate, especially for the first-time voters, second-time voters, just all of us. There's so much kind of like, there's so much rush to participate and to feel the process and to just have also a hand in what's happening currently. But in as much as we are eager to participate, we also need to do it in a meaningful way, in a way that is peaceful. But the peace that we're not talking about is not aimed to silence young people, because our voices, our realities, our experiences, they do matter, and our presence, even online, does matter, of course, but the key thing here is that peaceful participation doesn't mean anyone is trying to silence us. Peaceful participation is active citizenship that rejects violence, intimidation, and misinformation. Peaceful participation means using lawful, respectful, and non-violent ways to express views, engage leaders, and ask questions, monitor decisions, and contribute to community development. So, peaceful participation means using lawful means, using respectful means, and non-violent ways. So we are not trying to ask young people to be silent. We are asking for a peaceful process and a peaceful way of participating. And this can be done by following what the law says and also ensuring that we participate in a respectful manner, in a non-violent way, and we express our views in a respectable way. So it is not passive. Again, we might think, well, if we talk so much about peaceful participation, isn't that more like being passive and participating in a passive way? No, it does not. So citizens can still challenge unfairness, demand accountability, and advocate for change. The difference is that they do it without threats, without hate, without intimidation, and without distraction. Someone already talked about intimidation in the chat. That is a very important discussion to have. We, of course, want to be free. We know that we do have the rights to participate in the civic and electoral processes of the country by virtue of being citizens, and we are to participate actively. But participating actively is very, very different from being silent. It's also very different from taking a more passive approach. So we want to move away from young people thinking every time they are asked to participate in a more respectful way, in a more lawful way, in a non-violent way, to think and take that as a way of young people being silenced. And with advocacy, in most cases, we do have a higher chance of success and a higher chance of being heard. Should we just engage in a correct way? Should we just have the right conversations, call for peaceful dialogues, peaceful protests? We still have the chance of being heard as young people. Our voices and our realities still count. So why does peaceful participation matter? Peaceful participation protects people, it strengthens trust, it reduces conflict, and keeps democratic spaces open for youth, women, and marginalized groups. So again, when it comes to disengagement from young people, disengagement from marginalized groups, disengagement from women, most of it is happening because they feel like the civic space is not safe. They feel like, well, when you get involved in politics, well, there's so much violence, there's so much fighting, people are attacking each other. It's because if we shape the narrative of the civic space being this violent space, because of the way we are participating, because we're not being respectful and being lawful in our participation, it may deter very good candidates from actually taking up civic spaces, because it is framed as a space that is violent. So peaceful participation is very important because it actually protects individuals, it protects people, and it also encourages participation. So if a young woman somewhere in Nalolo wants to participate and contest as an MP, and recently, in the recent past, there's been a lot of violence in that space, and MPs are known for fighting the opposition and for fighting others and for being locked up. She will consider all those factors before she declares her interest to participate. So therefore, it becomes very important in how us as young people are shaping the civic space. So moving on, the conversation of rights and responsibilities. With every right, there comes a responsibility. The rights gives us space to act, but a responsibility guides us how we are to use the rights. For example, if we have a right to expression, we also have the right not to spread misinformation, the responsibility rather not to spread misinformation, not to spread hate speech. We have the right to association, but as we associate with others and as we participate and engage with others, we still have the responsibility to do it in a respectful manner. And also in our association, should we differ in our beliefs, should we differ in our views, we still have the responsibility to respect the divergent views. We have the right to vote. We are eligible to vote. So with that, that is a right, but it comes with a responsibility where we are supposed to follow the voting process respectfully, follow the electoral process respectfully, and follow the process according to the way it's supposed to be done, and also uphold peace during, before, during, and after the processes. So, of course, we also have the rights to equal treatment. We also have, with that right, a responsibility to cooperate with lawful authorities. So, should you be stopped to be questioned concerning a case or any matter that has transpired, you do have a responsibility to cooperate with that process. So, with any right we can think of, there comes a responsibility. I don't know if anyone in the chat can think about a right that does not come with a responsibility. We challenge you to post it in the comment section. But with each and every right, underneath it, you will find that there's still something you have to do as by virtue of you being able to enjoy that right. There's still a different side of that right that you need to uphold. And this is not for ourselves to enjoy those rights, but also for the next person, because in a democratic state, the same rights that you have, the individual sitting next to you also has that right. So the rights are not segregated for certain individuals or only for youths or only for senior youths or for extra senior youths. They are for everyone. And with that comes the responsibility so that the next person to you is also protected as they also enjoy their rights. Yes. So has anyone thought of a right that has no responsibility? I'm curious to check the comments. So of course not. I think I'll pause to just shift focus a bit to the comment section. So Doreen says, being open to divergent views is also a key factor in peaceful participation. Yes, exactly. So we should be able to allow people to have a different view. It's okay. It doesn't mean that if we have different views, a fight should break out, violence should break out. It's okay to have different views. That's part of a peaceful participation. That's part of a peaceful electoral and civic process. Does the right to life count as a right without a responsibility? No, it doesn't, because with the right to life, there's the responsibility for you not to kill someone. There's the responsibility for you not to disrupt someone's life. So there's still a responsibility to that, in the fact that the same way you are enjoying the right to life, you can't take away another person's life. And anytime you cross onto the other side of a right, then you are definitely infringing on someone else's right, infringing on someone else's participation. So someone says, Mr. Banda, can you elaborate? So yes, exactly. So we can move to the next slide to continue our conversation. So Zambia is founded on certain values and principles that are enshrined in our constitution, and the constitution is the guiding law of the land. It guides how we engage with others. It guides how we live as citizens. So our national values and principles, some of which I can mention that are relevant to our conversation, is morality and ethics. So our constitution speaks about how we are to conduct ourselves in a way that is moral, in a way that is not only self-seeking. It also talks about patriotism and national unity. Patriotism and national unity are also fundamental values that uphold how we participate as Zambians, how we enjoy our rights, how we interface with others. There's, of course, democracy and constitutionalism. There's human dignity, equity, social justice, equality, and non-discrimination, good governance and integrity, as well as sustainable development. All these are enshrined in these are values that guide how we participate in national issues, that guide how we even just relate with members of the community, with our fellow citizens. These are values that guide our participation. So anything done outside these key guiding values, then you might find yourself on the other side of the law. So electoral principles. So our elections are democratic in nature, meaning we go to the polls, we make those decisions, and we elect leaders. So the electoral process should support free and fair elections. Absence of violence. So this, the Constitution says this: absence of violence, intimidation, and corruption. Independent, accountable, efficient, and transparent administration. So the electoral process itself in the Constitution, Article 8, take interest in that. You will find that it is clearly defined how the electoral processes should transpire. So everything we've been discussing on this call is actually constitutional. And there are certain values that should guide how we engage in the electoral process. Okay, so someone is saying they understand now. That's great. So as a reflection from everything we've said so far, which value do you think is most important for peaceful youth participation and why? So I will take 2 people to unmute themselves and speak, and I'll take ongoing reflections also in the chat. So you can raise your hand if you're ready to speak. Which value do you think is most important? Since we say that we are guided by certain principles, we are guided by certain values, but which of these values do you think are most important for peaceful youth participation and why? So if someone is ready to unmute themselves, you can raise your hand, and you can also post in the chat. Which values do you think is most important when it comes to young people participating and why? I'm not seeing any hands. Okay, I'm seeing a hand from Mr. Banda. You can go ahead and speak.
Okay, thank you so much. So from my end, I think there are 2 that I've noted. Like for youth participation, if we have good governance and integrity, as well as the sustainable development, but now I'll speak much on the good governance. In a country or in a place where there's good governance, number 1 is to promote human dignity, and it also promote transparency and accountability, and also the areas of proper line in terms of youth participation in these various elections that happens. So
Yes.
I think good governance for me speaks a lot, as it covers most of the different aspects. Where there's good governance, the human dignity will be something that will be considered, and also equality and non-discrimination. In the area where there's good governance, these also will be covered. That means in that environment, automatically it will give an opportunity to an individual to participate effectively. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Banda. Yes, I totally agree with you. You've raised the issue of integrity, you've raised the issue of equality. All those are fundamental principles. If not enshrined in our constitution, it would actually be very difficult for us as young people to meaningfully participate. I will take another hand from Mpaso. Mpaso, you can Mapesho. Sorry about that. You can unmute yourself, Mapesho.
Thank you so much, ma'am. So I think my answer would be respect, because in order for young people or everyone at large to participate in civic issues, we have to respect each other's views and view each other as equal. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Yes, definitely. Respect is a key fundamental principle that allows young people to participate meaningfully. So I will head over to the comment section just to read what we are getting from there. So of course, integrity, and then Katusha says innovation and integrity. So integrity is coming up a lot. The right to vote, because it is, as Stella says, the right to vote because it's one of the many ways to express ourselves as youths. It acts as a voice to the voiceless. I like that. Hence, youth needs to be informed and educated on positive elections. Thank you so much for that. Michelle says human integrity, human dignity. So dignity is also coming up. When we recognize the dignity of every person, we are more likely to listen respectfully, tolerate different opinions, and also resolve disagreements peacefully. Exactly, human dignity. If we treat everybody else with some form of dignity, I think even the issues of violence would definitely reduce and would be able to talk it out respectfully and resolve without leading to violence. Again, Charity says human dignity because it's free from violence. And then Catherine says patriotism. Yes, all of these are very, very valid, and all of these are fundamental when it comes to allowing young people to have the flow, young people to have the space to participate meaningfully in the Zambian civic and electoral space. So Jacob says adherence to the law and submission to governance. Thank you so much. Anna says equality and non-discrimination, because in as much as we have different political parties, I'm glad someone is mentioning that we have different political parties and different views and opinions. We understand that we are all one before the law, and we will respect each other's views from violence. Thank you so much. Those have been very, very insightful. Those have been very, very great contributions. So we all agree that we need to have order. We need to have order, and we have values and principles that bring in that order. And these values and principles are actually drawn from the Constitution. So we are moving very well. Citizen rights in civic and electoral spaces. What are then our rights, right? We have principles guiding us. So now we are entering in this space with that information of how we should be guided and how we should have order. So what then are our rights? Rights support voices, participation, and accountability. So because we are sitting again from a point of view where we know our rights, we know that we do have the right to participate, we do have the right to vote should we be eligible. We then have the right and the courage to also voice out in a respectful manner, of course. Let's not, any other discussion we have, let's keep referring to the guiding principles. So number one, voice. So express opinions, ask questions, and raise concerns in a respectful way. So we have that right to voice out. We have the right to actually ask questions and say, oh, hey, how about ABCD? What then happens to ABCD? These commitments that were made, these promises that were made, we have the right to ask questions and raise concerns. We are concerned that young people in Nakonde are not meaningfully being engaged. Young people in Nakonde are being, left out, or there's no voter education going around because we have a lot of first-time voters and they're not well educated about the process and how they should go about it. So that is a concern, and we are all free to raise such concerns. Of course, being guided by the principles. So here, when it comes to voice, it's mostly the principle of respect. And then we have the freedom of association and assembly. We are free to join groups. We are free to join this online training session and participate and write in the comment section. We're free to have these conversations. No one is going to come and apprehend us because ActionAid has created this platform for us to have a conversation. So we have the right to do this. So we have the right again to join groups, participate in community initiatives, and attend lawful meetings. This is a lawful meeting. I'm happy to confirm that this is a lawful meeting. So we do have the right to participate in such spaces. So should you come across any other conversation where young people are discussing peaceful elections, and people are discussing the civic space, young people are discussing how they can be more meaningful to the civic space and to democracy, we are able to join those conversations, and we're able to also meaningfully and respectfully join those conversations and also contribute to those conversations, of course, from a respectful point of view. So that is ActionAid's stance. We can participate. Let's go out and participate. Let's go out and contest for positions. But let's do it in a respectful way. Let's do it in a way that brings about respect and unity. So information, right? We have the right to have information. Imagine if it's been concealed and you don't have access to knowing the candidates that are contesting. You're being denied that information. You're being denied the information to know where your nearest polling station is. That would definitely be a problem, and it means a right of yours is being denied. So that is that about information. We have the right to seek information, the information that we need to understand what's going on, and also seek to understand issues, even seek for the Constitution to be broken down to us in a language we can understand. We have that right. And of course, decisions in public spaces, we are able to ask for that information. So I'm receiving news that we have the main team on Microsoft Teams, but we also have a team watching us live on Facebook. So shout out to the team that's watching us on Facebook. Thank you so much for joining. And we are so grateful that you are here. Feel free to also comment on the Facebook Live. The comments will also be read. Your views will also be heard, and we'll get to also include you in the conversation that we're having. Thank you so much. So again, the fourth one is voting and choice. So we have, of course, this by now we've all established that we have the right to vote. By now, we should all know that if you're eligible, you are definitely free to go out and vote and make your decision. So eligible citizens can register and vote by a secret ballot. So we have that as a right in the civic space. So these are some of the rights that we have when it comes to how we engage with the civic space and with the electoral space. So a key takeaway here is that rights are strongest when expressed, when exercised. So let me say that again, rights are strongest when exercised peacefully and with respect for the rights of others. So the moment we infringe on another person's rights, then we are disrupting how things should flow. So we are now again still talking about responsibilities. What are our responsibilities? Peaceful participation depends on duties as much as rights. So it is not enough for us to say, I have a right, I have a right. I think as young people, we say this a lot. I have a right, right? I have a right. No, I actually have a right to talk. Yes, we do, but what are our responsibilities? Especially in the civic space. Let's seek to understand the Constitution, because as you stand up to say you have the right, at least let's do it from an informed point of view. That way, young people will be taken more seriously, because we'll be saying, actually, according to Article 43, according to Article 8, it's backed by something. So let's learn the basic rules that guide rights, leadership, public institution, public participation. Let's learn what that entails. And of course, through sessions like this, we're getting a lot of information. And because of ActionAid, through the support that we got from the European Union, we're able to convene in this manner and discuss and inform ourselves and educate ourselves. So that is great. So someone says I'm breaking. I'm still on the same internet. I hope it stabilizes. Okay, so number one, seek to understand the Constitution. Number two, register and vote if you are eligible. Definitely, you have the responsibility. If you are eligible, there's no reason why you should say, I don't want to participate, I don't want to vote, I don't want to have anything to do with it. You should definitely go out and participate. You should definitely go out and register if you are eligible. Of course, by now, we should all be registered by now. This is June. We should all be registered by now. We should all be set to go and cast our votes. And of course, the third one, promote national unity. Reject hate speech, tribalism, discrimination, and political violence. We need to refrain from these in order for our country to be united, in order for us to continue enjoying the peace that we've enjoyed as citizens. And of course, respect law and order. Use lawful channels for complaints. I think mostly what causes us as young people to find ourselves on the other side of the law is because we're failing to use the right and lawful channels. We're failing to bring our leaders to a dialogue. We're failing to have sit-down conversations with our leaders. Of course, because most of our issues are urgent to us, and that is very valid, but that is not an excuse for us then to go and use unlawful means. That is not an excuse for us to use unlawful means. So protect the community. We have the responsibility to do that. We have the responsibility not to spread misinformation like we discussed in the first session, to spread threats, to send threatening messages to others that can cause harm, and we definitely do not want to be found participating in that. And of course, we have the responsibility to engage with evidence. I think I should have put this in red, engage with evidence. So all this leads to now how we're engaging. So you need to seek understanding. You need to be able to register if you are eligible. Of course, withhold national unity, respect for law and order, protect your community. That is our responsibility, to protect the communities. And of course, engage with confidence. So I'm seeing some comments that I'm not clear and I'm breaking. Can you confirm with me in the chat if you can get me now? Okay, I'm seeing some thumbs up. Thank you. Okay, it's better now. Thank you. I'm so glad. So just as a recap of this little bit, we talked about responsibilities. We have the responsibility to seek understanding, to understand just the basic rules of what the Constitution says, the rights and our responsibilities as citizens. And of course, we have the responsibility to register and participate in elections. And of course, promote national unity, respect law and order, protect the community, and engage with evidence. I want you to put engage with evidence in caps. Engage with evidence. That is very, very key. All right, so peaceful participation across the electoral cycle. So the electoral cycle is not just the day when we're going to the polls in August and we cast our ballot and we wait for results. So there's a prior process to that before elections. what do we do? The best thing we can do, especially for first-time voters, learn what the process is. Learn what steps are there. I'm sure we all heard a lot about the limitation. Understand, even if you're not participating in that, understand what that is, what that means for your constituency. What does that mean for you, where you stay with your MP, with your constituency? What does delimitation mean? Seek to understand those processes and follow along as the entire process is going through. And of course, before elections, you should gear yourself up and get registered. If you haven't by now, like I said, we're in June, then you're not fulfilling this responsibility. So we hope all of us on this call are well-meaning citizens who did register. Ask issue-based questions. So if you understand that this is the issue in our constituency, you are able to ask questions before the election so that you participate with information, you participate with the knowledge, and you understand how to position yourself as a young person. So that is all done before elections. Share verified voter information. Register and also verify, where are you voting from? Are your details correct? You have that. So that is how we can participate before elections. Reject threats and hate speech. At this time, even before elections, let's ensure that we are not contributing to the threats that are going around, to the hate speech, because it does intimidate people from participating. And it just shapes further the narrative that the civic space and the electoral space is not peaceful, it's not safe. And then, of course, during elections, let's vote peacefully. Let's show up, let's vote peacefully, let's respect any rules that you will find at the polling station. If we are told to stand here, let's go ahead and do that until we get our chance to get to the secret ballot and cast our vote. And then during elections, let's avoid intimidation, right? Like as we discussed, just because we have different opinions, just because we believe in different things, it doesn't mean that we should start intimidating each other and scaring people from actually showing up to vote. Respect common, report concerns lawfully. Concerns, if you're concerned, for us, our polling station was opened late, it doesn't mean we start breaking out into violence. Let's report that lawfully, and let's also monitor. As young people, let's be very interested in monitoring. So the polling station that you are registered under, where you're going to vote from, be able to also monitor the situation as you go there, because you do have that responsibility. If you see there's anything unusual going on, be able to monitor that and flag it in a respectful manner. So all the polling stations will have election monitors, and most of these are young people that are deployed to go out as election monitors. So be able to reach out to those and report if you see any anomaly. And then, of course, do not share unverified results or rumors. Do not share any unverified results or rumors. Let's respect the process and let's allow the process to take the course until results are announced. And then after elections, let's accept and respect official processes and official results. Regardless of the outcome, I know most of us, we tend to have very strong opinions and very strong, viewpoints. In your view, if you feel like, no, the results should be like this, and the results actually end up turning out in a different way, you should still be able to respect the outcomes. Use lawful dispute channels. So if you feel like, okay, after elections, there's a dispute, this is not clear, I'm not sure how this happened, that's also fine, but use lawful means and lawful channels. And the most important one that we can very much hone in as young people, let's monitor promises and commitments. By now, we should have written down promises. What did our MP say? What did our presidential candidates say? What did everyone? Let's track promises. Let's form committees. Let's form groups where we then record these promises and commitments and have a more structured way of following up the commitments and holding their leaders accountable. We've talked about accountability, and of course, we've talked about how to do it in a more peaceful and meaningful way. So we can then follow up after elections. We have that responsibility as young people to follow up on promises and commitments that have been made by our candidates, that have been made by our leaders after elections. Personally, I want to join a group, I want to join a committee that will be in charge, or that would task themselves to follow up on commitments. That would be very, very interesting. As young people, even us as ActionAid, we should definitely gear up to start following up on commitments immediately after elections. So at what stage are youth neglected? So I've talked about before elections, during elections, and after elections. At what stage, just to open up for another discussion, at what stage do you think young people are neglected? And what can us as youth-led groups, what can ActionAid do? What can Global Platform do? What can all these youth groups and youth movements do about it? At what stage are young people neglected? And what do you think youth groups, even young activists, youth activists, what do you think can be done to ensure that young people are not left behind at the 3 stages: before elections, during elections, and after elections? So the chat is open, and the floor is also open for hands and for mics to start flying around. At what stage? Is it before? Is it during? Is it after? At what stage do we then, are we being left behind? At what stage do you feel like we don't really have a lot of information on? It could be also information. At what stage do you think needs to be covered properly? If we have hands, if we have comments in the chat, I think now would be a great time. At what stage do you think young people are neglected? Is it before? Is it during? Is it after? And why? I hope we are typing, because I'm seeing a lot of silence. Are we typing? Are we about to raise our hands? At what stage are young people neglected? So we have a hand from, so I'll allow Jameson to speak first, followed by Reston.
Thank you so much. Am I audible?
Yes, you are.
All right, great. And I'm glad Vivian, you corrected the pronunciation. Actually, Jameson and not Jameson. Yeah,
of course.
In terms of answering the question, my view is that youth are neglected. And about this view, because many times we, as youth, prior to elections, we don't ask the how. If there is a promise on the part of political players that they're going to do so much for the young people, we don't ask the how, and we don't ask for the timeline. So if they promise, for example, employment opportunities, the fact that employment opportunities have been promised is not enough. We need to ask for timeline. So if they say, okay, no, once I'm elected, I'll employ so many, and on the 11th hour, maybe when the next election is almost upon us, and we want to hold them now accountable based on the promise, it becomes difficult because there was no timeline that was provided. So even as we are having these discussions, even as we are learning, and also addressing this issue of looking at what points the youth are neglected, we need to ask the how, and we need to ask also for the timeline, so that some of these promises are put in place. I mean, some of these these issues have got specific action plans so that we can hold accountable. Thank you so much. That's my point.
Thank you so much for your contribution, Jameson. That's true. We move on to Reston, who had his hand, and then shortly after, we'll move on to Musaka.
Yeah, thank you very much for the opportunity to answer to this question. It is indeed a very important question, and it calls for this training. I mean, this training has come at the right time. In answering your question, you know, political players, they actively seek youth participation before elections, especially now, to ensure that they garner all the youths around them so that the youths give them the very important votes that they need. But once the votes are cast, you find that after the elections are done, results come up, the political focus shifts to governance and leaving the youths out of formal decision-making spaces. And this is a huge problem. And I appreciate this question. And therefore, in answering this question, what is it that youth-led movements and groups must do in order to just transition from the pre-election activity to ensuring that even after the elections, the youth-led organizations remain effective? We must therefore ensure that we utilize formal civic channels like you indicated in order for us to hold these political leaders accountable. We must create things like public scorecards based on the performance at a particular time, maybe quarterly or half yearly or annually, to see how much of the promises have actually been delivered. We need to ensure that we move away from just being youth-led movements. We become civic action-oriented organizations so that we can hold our leaders accountable. They shouldn't just leave the youths at a time of pre-election, but we need to be a part and parcel after elections and hold them accountable, and we even score their performance to say elections were based on promises, and let us see what promises you've actually fulfilled. And therefore, we need to reorganize ourselves as youth-led organizations to ensure that we structure these tracking mechanisms in the post-election activities so that we see the development. We hold these people accountable. We conduct the community accounting forums. If it is at, for instance, if it is at a health center, are services being delivered at the health center according to what was promised? We need to ensure that all these mechanisms are actually put in place. And lastly, I would urge us as youth-led movements to ensure that we build alliances to see and learn from each other how the best practices are being done in a certain area which others are not doing, so that we complement each other on how to hold political players accountable at every given time. And I think we will become very effective. I appreciate this training as the Stambo Development Foundation. It is very good. It has come at the right time. We need to just revitalize our activities and mechanisms to ensure that we hold the political leaders accountable. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Reston Gosa. I think key takeaways we can get from that comment is let's have a more structured way of holding leaders accountable. So if we don't approach it with structure, if we don't approach it in a more unified way as youth groups, youth movements, youth-led organizations, youth-focused organizations, if we don't work together, if we are not structured, we will not get anywhere. So first things first, let's come up with communities. that idea. I like that that has been brought forward. Let's all go back into our communities and our groupings and think of how we can find a way of scoring the elections, how we can think of scoring the government performance, our leaders, the leaders we're going to elect. Let's have scorecards and let's have them also aware what we are scoring them on so that they know to what is the benchmark. What are young people expecting us by putting us into power? So we can do that by having community scorecards, having even national scorecards, number one, and then having a more structured way of holding leaders accountable. And then, of course, let's share best practices. If something has worked in Nakonde, can we spread that word? Can we allow another team somewhere else to know about that best practice and perhaps explore how they can make it work in their own localities? So that there are very great submissions there. I think we can take one last hand. I saw a hand which has gone down. Let's take one more hand. If you had your hand up, you can just raise it again and we'll be able to bring you to the to the floor. But I saw Musaka had a hand. Okay, yes, the hand has gone up again. Go ahead and bring forth your contribution.
Hello, good morning.
Good morning.
My submission is similar to the previous speaker, but so what I wanted to say is that mostly young people are left out. In the beginning, they are involved because then they are more energetic, they could do more of the campaigns. And then during the elections, then now they are left out. Some of them, a huge bunch of them are left out. Say, for example, now that the University of Zambia is closed, I stand to be corrected. So imagine if 1,000 students registered to vote in the polling stations within the university. So now they are home. Maybe they live in Wapula province. So that is 1,000 students out of the voting because they are not able to vote. Some of them can't come here because they don't have accommodation then. So don't have systems in place that enable or are there to allow for a seamless transition from this polling station to this polling station, to make it flexible for in such circumstances. These situations, yes, don't happen all the time, but in situations when they happen, what then do we what strategies are there to help young people who still want to vote? Because then we have taken away their right to vote then. So during the elections, that is, I think, a part that I could think of how these young people are left out. But then after the elections also, they are left out of the implementation, the policy making, because we see that in most of these offices, we have our parents who are still doing the implementation, the policies, writing out the laws that are also affecting young people. So if young people can be involved, or we find ways of involving more young people in participating in policy making, in the implementation, in talking about so many challenges that young people are facing, that could also affect everyone altogether. I think it reminds me of a community participatory action where we go back to the community and then we work together as policymakers, as implementers, as people who want to come up with or who want to implement a certain project. We go back to the community and then engage them into the process of finding out how best we can help their community then. So if that can be done, I think it would be good for our country going forward. I'm not aware of how other countries do their electoral process, but I think it can help us all together. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for that insightful contribution. So we can clearly see that at all the three stages, before elections, during elections, and after elections, there are certain gaps that are leaving young people left out, that are leaving people, young people in a position where they are not able to participate meaningfully because whether they could be they are not given the right information, they're not given the platform, they're not being engaged meaningfully. And then, of course, during elections, someone has brought forth the issue of young people being displaced from where they're supposed to vote from, which could be, of course, a challenge. And then after, the issue of then young people being left behind because these political leaders have gained office and they forget about the young people who put them in office, and they forget about the commitments that they made. So let's take these key actions away, and even as we leave this session, let's ponder upon how we can go in as young people and fill in these gaps and also propose solutions. There's been brilliant solutions that have come up just on this call, and we've been able to record them. We'll be able to again go back to our desks and evaluate and also pick up some of the key proposals that young people have made in how the civic and electoral process can be made more inclusive, can be made more accessible to young people, and some of the innovative ideas that have come up from this call. So thank you so much for that. We'll go back to our discussion. So then how do we practice peaceful participation? There are 5 steps that we've put together that can guide how we participate in a more peaceful way. Number 1, let's identify the issue. So what exactly is the problem affecting young people at all these stages? The way we've been able to identify from the previous discussion question, let's come up with now issue statements. What is the problem? And let's come up with these statements in a very clearly defined way. And I'm very happy that everyone here is coming out very clearly. We're able to say, young people, this is the problem. They registered here, they've been displaced, this is the problem. So that's the first step. Number 2, let's verify the facts. Is it really true that you can't vote from another place? Is it really true that this particular issue that we're facing or that we think is there, is it really there? So what evidence, what laws, what policy or official information supports this, that it's even an issue? And then number 3, let's choose the right space. According to the issue that we are dealing with, do we think this can go to the WDCs and we can have conversations there? Is it the schools? Does it have to do with the schools? Does it have to do with the universities? Who are we targeting? Because we can have a very clear statement. We can have evidence, but then who are we targeting? If we're just going online and making Facebook posts about it, who exactly are we targeting? Who are we tagging? If we're tagging, who are we tagging? Are we tagging RATSA? Are we tagging SZ? Are we tagging the University of Zambia? Are we tagging, and also if we're going physically, where are we going? Are we just going to the streets to say, oh no, there's this issue, who are we targeting? So let's also clearly define that. Then now we can move on to the 4th stage, where we now, after we've defined who we are targeting and who the responsible government wing is for that particular issue, let's then approach them and engage with them respectfully. Let's use clear language. Let's listen to others. Sometimes we're eager to speak, but let's also listen, and let's avoid insults and threats. So we've identified that this is an ECZ issue. Let's go to ECZ. Yes, the 4 of us, the 5 of us, or the 50 of us on this call, we then go to ECZ, right? How are we structuring our approach? How are we engaging with them after they finally, give us that audience? How are we engaging? And then, of course, after we've done everything, the final stage is then to follow up. After we've made our submission, we've made our issue known to the relevant government wing or the relevant stakeholder in this case, then now let's follow up. Let's record responses, let's agree on the next steps, and let's track whether action is being taken, whether anything is changing about the issue that we raised. So these are the 5 steps that we can take when it comes to engaging and participating peacefully. So there's a statement here that says, peace is not the absence of violence, it is the disciplined use of voice for positive change. So let's use our voices for positive change. So we already spoke a little bit about the digital space and how as young people we are online, and now we are interfacing with AI, which can perpetuate further misinformation, wrong information, and the likes. So online participation is still civic participation. It doesn't mean that for me, if I choose to stay home and tag RATSA or tag ECZ on my phone, then I'm not participating. That's also participation. And there's a way in which we're supposed to engage should we decide to go digital. Even as ActionAid, if we decide to do a digital campaign, there are still certain guiding principles. So I'm sure most of you are from various groupings, various youth-led organizations, various youth movements. Maybe you are individual activists. There are certain ways in which we can engage respectfully online. So the first is to pause before we share anything. So check the source. Is it coming from a credible source? Or is it coming from, there's this Facebook page I came across called Causeway. Is it verified? Let's check, is Causeway verified? Is Causeway a verified source? Can I write on everything they are sharing on their Facebook page? Let's check, is it verified? Is it an official source, right? Let's check the date. When was this shared? Is this fresh information? Is this, who are the authors? Which page, which blogger is sharing this? And then do not forward messages that may incite fear, hatred, or violence. So after we verified that, okay, this is ECZ, the official ECZ Facebook page, the official ECZ X account, then we can go ahead and engage in that and share, because we know that ECZ is one of the verified sources of information that we can count and rely on. And then, of course, use official channels. For election information, verify with official sources such as ECZ. Let's check official sources when it comes to the online space. And let's see that we are sharing from and we're tapping information from verified sources. Formal notices and trusted civic education materials, pages, and forums. For us as ActionAid, we do not issue out any online statements, any online information that is not verified. So if you are part of a movement, you're part of an organization, also go and take this word out to your organization and make sure that you only share information from verified sources, so that you do not participate in spreading further misinformation, so that you are not found again even wanting on the other side of the law. So also protect others. Avoid exposing private data, threatening people, mocking disability, using sexist language, or targeting people because of political views. So let's also protect others. Let's refrain from sharing people's private information. If you work at a health facility and you know that these candidates came to access this specific medication, do not start using that against them and then exposing that information to the public. Then you are definitely contributing to a civic space that is not safe for everybody to participate in. All right, so inclusion makes participation peaceful and meaningful. Peaceful spaces must be safe for young women, youth with disabilities, and marginalized groups. So this space should be opened up for everybody to be able to meaningfully participate. So inclusive participation asks that, who is missing from this space? So we should be able to ask ourselves. So imagine if we had this conversation and it wasn't open to everybody to be able to participate, then we should ask that question. Who is missing from this space? What barriers stop them from participating? What support is needed? Who controls the agenda? Imagine if we're speaking alone and none of you are able to also contribute to this conversation, then that's not being inclusive. How will feedback be shared? So all those are some of the questions we should be able to ask if we are to be intentional about creating a more inclusive civic space. So rights, responsibilities, and peaceful action. So we have an exercise here, and I would like all of us to participate. So this is a scenario-based exercise. So the first scenario reads, a group of young people are angry because a community project has not started as promised. A group of young people are angry because a community project has not started as promised. Some want to insult the councillor online and organize a protest without checking the facts. So for our questions, and I want us to just use the chat quickly for these ones. Question number 1, feel free to answer any of these questions. Question number 1, which rights are involved? Which rights are involved here when it comes to us as young people being angry that a community project has not started as promised? Number 2, what responsibilities must be observed from everything we've discussed? Whenever we have an issue, a grievance as young people, what responsibility must we observe? What information should be verified first? So I will pause a bit to allow us to get to the comment section or the chat box for us who are on Teams. And for those who are on Facebook, the comment section, what rights are involved? What responsibilities must be observed? What information should be verified before we even engage? What kind of information should we verify? Because we think a community project has not started as promised, or we feel or we notice that a community project has not started as promised. Which rights are involved? What responsibilities must be observed? What information should be verified first? Which peaceful action should the group take? I'll pause a bit to allow for some comments. So Walia says freedom of expression and the right to access information. Yes, freedom of expression. Because of course, we are free to express that this project hasn't started as promised. And then of course, we are free to then go to the councillor, to the MP, to the WDC to go and ask for information on the projects that we were promised. So yes, Walia, thank you so much for that. Teresa says, engage with evidence. Yes, we've discussed a lot about engaging with evidence. Understand what the Constitution says about protests, respect the law and order as they voice out their grievances. Yes, there is an issue. A community project has delayed. Our responsibility here is to seek correct and verified information. Before we go out to the streets, let's find out, has this community project really delayed? Or was there an issue with the contractor, or what's happening? Let's find out. And then let's access information. Let's engage with evidence. So Janet said the right to information. Yes, the right to information here needs to come to play because we want to find out how far with our community project. and we have the right to access that information. She also says responsibility to follow up. Yes, we have the responsibility to follow up because we talked about being able to track commitments. So if a commitment has been made, we are definitely free to then follow up. And then information to be verified is the process of project implementation, includes budget, procurement, etc. So she mentions that there's a lot of things that might be in play. So has the procurement process started? Have they found a contractor for this project? What is happening? So there's a lot we still need to verify, and then find out how far along has the budget been approved? Is there even a budget for this project? And then, of course, engagement through dialogue as it preserves dignity. Thank you so much. So Walia says, why the project hasn't started? Yes, let's go and ask, why hasn't this project started? We are free to go and ask all those questions. Thank you so much. So I will jump back into the presentation. We are seeing all the comments that are going on. Thank you so much for those. And so everything that we've discussed here, as a way of wrapping it up and summing it up, our key takeaway, number one, if you forget everything we've said, number one, peaceful participation is active, lawful, respectful, and non-violent. Peaceful participation is active, lawful, respectful, and non-violent. Rights and responsibilities must be practiced together. Don't practice rights alone without thinking about responsibilities, without thinking that there's no responsibility, there's no precaution whatsoever. So rights and responsibilities must go hand in hand. The third takeaway is that the electoral participation includes what citizens do before, during, and after elections. So when it comes to the electoral process, let's not just think about the secret ballots, the day of voting, going to line up, going to stand in the queue. There's also participation before. How do we participate before, during, as well as after? So the fourth takeaway is that misinformation, hate speech, and intimidation weakens democracy and community trust. So let's remember from the first session we had, misinformation can erode trust. It can hinder with the proper flow of the electoral process and the democracy, the peace, and the unity that we've been enjoying as a country. Youth participation becomes stronger when it is inclusive, informed, and evidence-based. So these are the 5 takeaways. You're free to take a screenshot, you're free to write them down, you're free to just take them in. These are the key takeaways that have guided and that you can take away from our discussion from this session. So this is what we've been discussing. Thank you so much for listening in to this session. We appreciate your participation. Thank you. So I will now hand it over. Before I do that, maybe we can just have our last reflection on this session, because we have a few minutes left. So the reflection question is, what is one peaceful civic action that you would take after this session? One civic action that you would take. Is it sharing this information with someone else? Is it checking in on a friend if they registered, if they verified? Is it checking in with someone if they are going out to vote? So let's check in. What one peaceful civic action? What civic action? What is one peaceful civic action? Keyword peaceful civic action are we taking after this? So while we think about that and while we reflect, even if you do not share them, please reflect on everything that has been said. Reflect on how you're going to go back into the community after this session. Reflect on the way forward. And as you do that, in the chat box, I am adding in our final evaluation. So we've had this training from the first session to the second session. I've added now a survey for us to fill in. A survey, which I've also pinned. So this survey allows us to understand how the session has been. It allows us to see what stood out for you. It allows us to see whether these are conversations that you would like to have again, whether you would like to participate in such activities. So we have a post-session survey. At the start, we did a pre-survey, but now we have a post-survey. It should not take you more than 2 minutes to click through and fill in. Feel free to attend to that. It should not take you long at all. Fill that in as you also reflect on the civic action that you are going to take back after this session. So I'll also take this time to read through the comments. So Doreen says, create a WhatsApp poll among my peers to find out how many are registered and will actively participate in voting. I like this so much. So most of us are on WhatsApp. So you can definitely do that among your peers, among your group, and find out. Let's also share ideas. Sizwe says, sharing the information with my peers and other fellows in my community. Thank you so much for that. Walia says, check if my friends have registered and kept their voters cards safe. Yes, let's check in on our friends. Do they still remember where their voters cards are? So thank you so much for that. Daliso says, encourage people around my circle to vote because most of them are planning not to because they think it doesn't matter. Okay, so that's the issue of voter apathy. So let's check in. Let's also educate our peers and definitely assure them that their vote matters. So again, Chisomo says, speak against such acts being shared in the groups. Yes, there are certain reports that are being shared that people are being, there's some political violence and cadres in Kabwe. So yes, let's speak against such. Let's also not participate in the spreading of such because sometimes it could instill fear. And then Grant says, I will share this information with my community. Thank you so much, Grant. Anna says, sharing the information, letting others know that in as much as you have rights, you also have responsibilities. I think we should pin this. Yes, in as much as you have rights, you have responsibilities. In as much as you have rights, you have responsibilities. This is such a key takeaway. And also, it was thing number 4 of our takeaway of the 5. Rights and responsibilities should be practiced together. So Mercy says, thank you for the insightful session. I, for one, will share the information I have gotten with my friends and family. Thank you so much, Mercy. Reston says, I will share that rights and responsibilities to my peers. Mapesho says, one peaceful civic action I would take after this session is to actively promote informed and peaceful participation within my community, especially among young people. So everybody has definitely indicated what they would do after this session. Thank you so much for committing, just by virtue of you writing in the comments to indicate what civic action you would take. It does show that you were paying attention, and of course, a number of things that were in session 1 as well as session 2 have been repeated by our participants, which again shows a lot of understanding. It shows that the session has been clear because it's been able to be repeated. The issue of engaging respectfully, the issues of responsibilities and rights being practiced together, and the issue of also actively going out to vote. So thank you so much for all those responses. Another final reminder to fill in our post-session survey. This is very, very important information in order to make these sessions possible. In order for us to host more of such sessions, we need your voices, we need data, and we need to be able to compile and say that to the people who supported this particular session, they need to also see that this is a meaningful session to continue having, and this is a meaningful conversation that a lot of people are interested in, and we can only do that if we fill out our post-training survey. If you did not fill in the pre-training survey, you can scroll up and find it as well, but right now I have pinned the post-training survey. Feel free to fill that in, and I will hand it over to our project lead, Benjamin Mwape, who is going to close the same way he started our session. Thank you so much, everybody, for your active participation, for all the comments that have come in. I appreciate all of you.
Great. Thank you so much, Vivian. This has been a very insightful session. We can give Vivian a virtual clap, virtual round of applause for a very insightful session, which was building on very well to the earlier session. And so you can actually now see how peaceful civic participation is a necessity if civic engagement is going to be effective. So we're not just speaking to civic engagement, active citizenship, and the whole need to have young people and young leaders proactively participating in electoral processes, but it needs to be done in a manner that will preserve the essence of what we're trying to achieve. So there's a huge, a significant link between the need to participate, but also the need to participate so peacefully, responsibly as well. And I think all of that tied together will really begin to reshape the narrative for us. I think that one of the things that Bibian spoke to, which was very key and stuck with me, was the fact that, look, if we're going to promote, for example, higher participation of young women in politics, and on one hand, or in electoral processes, and on one hand, you have an environment that is not peaceful, it already pushes that participation away. So we cannot, it will not be attractive for potential leaders, emerging leaders, to be able to participate in electoral processes if the environment is not peaceful. So there is no question about it that we need to be able to participate, and we need to be able to do so by upholding a peaceful environment. And we are then responsible as people that had the privilege of being on this call this morning to be able to take this information and pass it on to others as well. So without further ado, I know we started slightly late. That's why we've pushed a little bit as well, just to get us done with this last bit. But mine is to just really say thank you so much to every one of you who was able to participate on this online training in civic electoral processes to promote democracy and good governance. This is the first in the series for us on this particular project together with their colleagues, and we're looking forward to having a lot more interactions and trainings of this kind moving forward. And I could see also in the feedback comment section that this is something that people are interested to continue to have. So we will definitely engage you further with some of the other upcoming trainings. For now, thank you so much, and we wish you all the best as you translate all the information that we've shared together today into practical action within your spaces, within your communities, and let's together make change happen. Thank you so much. Have a good rest of the day.